Good morning. How many thousand people are in this room? Good morning. All right, good. You all look good. Look at you, right? So give yourselves a hand for being here as literacy leaders for the world, right? We've got a lot of other important literacy leaders here. We have a whole group of past ILA presidents who are up here, and I hope they'll turn the lights on. Will you all stand up and turn around and look at the audience if you're here? So are you tired of hearing that we live in trying times? Yeah, me too. But these are trying times, aren't they? And there's, in some ways, there's nothing more important than what we as educators do to help develop readers and writers who have the knowledge, imagination, self-reflection, and empathy to make the times better. To be really sort of contributing citizens to all of our nations around the world, to try to solve the problems and not argue endlessly or tweet about them. So we're all going to be talking a lot during the next 3 days about reimagining literacy. And I think that part of that reimagining of literacy is something we've really discussed for the past 10 years, 20 years maybe. And that is that literacy is no longer just a print-based kind of a thing. Because of our inventions of new tools for the human mind, literacy's really evolved to where it's fundamentally a multimedia process. So in other words, to be literate, you need to be able to process and create text that incorporate print and images and sound, right? But you knew that. And we've all been, I think, in many ways, trying to increasingly incorporate computer technologies into our conception of literacy and literacy instruction in our classrooms, right? Some of us are doing that a little more easily than others, but I think we're all there. I think we've done that. We've got a lot to work out in terms of how we teach digital technologies and how those things become not just an end in themselves, if you will, but rather sort of part and parcel of what literacy is. But I guess what I'd like us to think about is we reimagine literacy together during these next 3 days, that there's one additional issue that I hope we'll all think about. It's kind of one of those good news, bad news things, I think, in a lot of ways. Because as a field in literacy education and in education in general, we've really striven to become a much more evidence-based in terms of our literacy instruction, right? And that's good news. And as part of that, we've also become more data-driven. We form teacher teams, grade level teams with our principal or our school head, and we look at what the data say about where our students are in their development of literacy, and then we use those data and the insights from those data to plan for what we can do to move each student, every kid, every teenager ahead from there, right? Good news. Maybe. So why maybe? That students read, I think, is really, really important. We all know that. We all agree to that. The key to getting really good at reading is reading. We have plenty of research that shows that that's true. But also, what students read is equally, if not more important. Part of what we do with those data and in those data meetings is to look at where our kids are and decide, so what text would be appropriate next steps for them, right? It's a kind of a really age-old idea, really matching student and book. We've talked about that for a long time in our field. Librarians have talked about that for a long time in our field. Now maybe we want to sort of rethink that a little bit. Instead of matching student to book, it's all about matching student to text, because there are so many different kinds of texts that we're thinking about now. It might be a book. It might be an ebook. It might be an app. It might be a multimedia production. But whatever those things are, the question still becomes, what makes a good match, right? And how shall I say this? Some would have us believe that we can figure out that match by looking at the student's most recent progress monitoring assessment and matching that to the, you pick it, Lexile, Source Reader, F&P, AR, degrees of reading power level of that text, right? But let's think for just a minute about the link between the child in the book, the teenager in the book, the child in the text, the teenager in the text. So when, true story, right? When a child says, you know, I really want to read this R.L. Stine book, and the teacher says, well, you know, that book isn't on your level, but if you pass 5 more tests on books, then you'll be okay to read that R.L. Stine book, right? Or, true story number 2. Parent and a child come into the local children's bookstore. Child looks around for a while, brings the book up to the parent and says, this is the one I want. And the parent says, oh, you know, that one's not on your list from school for your level, so let's take this one instead, right? And when incidents like these occur, and I'll bet we could go around the room and get a lot more stories like those stories, right? When incidents like these occur, what's happened to the concept of matching the child reader or the teen reader to the text, right? It's like, what's gone wrong here? So here's the thing. The fundamental link between a kid and a book or other kind of text, the fundamental link, the thing that's most important isn't merely quantitative, is it? So unless you say, well, you know what, really the ideas in the text don't really matter that much. If that's the way you think, then sentence complexity, vocabulary difficulty, text organization are all that count. Unless the ideas in the book are not all that interesting, and the only thing that the book provides for that reader is giving practice in word recognition, decoding, fluency, all of which, every one of those things of which is important, every one of those things of which is necessary, right? We all know that. But they're not sufficient, are they? So here's my kind of thought for the day and for the next 3 days on reimagining literacy. Let's all together really think about what texts students interact with in our classroom. What text we help them find for reading on their own. What text we talk to our school librarians or our public librarians about that would be great for our students to read. What text we send home with kids. So through the primary grades, those kinds of leveled readers, I think, are really, really useful and really, really important for helping kids develop initial literacy skills. But leveled readers don't constitute a reading program, right? It kind of drives me crazy when we ask people, so like, what's your school reading curriculum? What is it? And they respond with the name of the guided reading program that they're using. That's the school reading program. Well, that's one important part of an elementary school literacy program, but it's not the program, if you know what I mean. I think what we need, what students need, is books, texts with substance, books with depth that will build the knowledge about the world, about peoples around the world, books that will help them develop imagination and the self-reflection and the empathy that I mentioned earlier. And that's kind of what I'm imagining for literacy. The literacy, it not only gives us the skills, right, and it makes us college and career ready, but it also makes us human. If I knew how to start a campaign, I'm not really good at campaigns. I don't know how to do campaigns. I like campaigns, but I can't do campaigns. But if I could create a campaign, right, I'd start one on making high-quality literature at the absolute heart of literacy instruction and literacy education. Ooh, I'm glad you like that. Right? Sort of a campaign of making sure that substantive, thoughtful narrative texts, right, and informational texts are at the foundation of teaching reading and writing, and all subject areas as well. A lot of great authors are going to be here over the next 3 days, some of whom you see on the screen. And I'd just like to invite you to really think about what you hear them say about how they work, and really about why they work. In other words, why is it they do what they do, those authors, those illustrators, those creators of multimedia text. Think about what literature can do for the mind and what that means to us as literacy professionals. And as literacy leaders, and everybody in this room is a literacy leader. That's why you're here. That's why you came. As literacy leaders, we need to carry the message back to our schools and to our school leaders, right? Don't forget about them. Don't just take it back to your colleagues, but take it back to the leaders in the schools as well, that the book matters, the text matters, the quality and content need to be front and center in thinking about what we offer children to read, what we offer our adolescents to read, and what we share with our schools' families and what we share with our schools' communities. And the world needs your leadership now to make that kind of thing happen. Thanks.